Have you ever found yourself in a relationship where it felt like you were giving everything, but it just wasn't enough? Maybe you've been hurt, or maybe you've been the one who hurt someone else. But let me tell you this, relationships are a reflection of the state of your heart. You can't change what's going on around you until you first change what's going on within you. And today I want to talk about the secret, the hidden key that can unlock the deepest, most powerful relationships in your life. It's not something you can buy, and it's not something you can just wish for. It's something that requires us to go deeper, to heal, to forgive, and most importantly, to grow. Because when we get this right, when we understand the secret to stronger relationships, we don't just change the people we're with, we change the atmosphere we walk into. So are you ready to discover it? When it comes to building stronger relationships, the first and most vital step is self-awareness and inner healing. You cannot fully connect with others until you first understand who you are, what you bring to the table, and what areas of your heart and mind need attention. The reason so many relationships struggle is that we approach them without first taking a deep look at ourselves. We expect others to fulfill us, heal us, or even change us. But the truth is that no one can truly meet those needs unless we're willing to do the work inside of ourselves. Self-awareness begins with acknowledging your emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. It's about recognizing patterns in your life that may be hurting you or those around you. Have you ever noticed how in the heat of an argument, you might react impulsively only to regret it later? Or maybe you hold grudges and find it hard to forgive, even when you know it's hurting you more than the other person. These are signs that something within you needs healing. Self-awareness means confronting those patterns head on and making a decision to change. It's uncomfortable, yes, but it's the foundation for any meaningful relationship. It also involves recognizing the role your past plays in your present. If you grew up in an environment where love wasn't unconditional or relationships weren't healthy, it can be difficult to break free from those patterns as an adult. Sometimes, without even realizing it, we carry the baggage of our past relationships into new ones. This can create expectations and fears that prevent us from truly connecting with others. Understanding the wounds from your past allows you to process them, and more importantly, to prevent them from dictating your future interactions. Healing is a process that takes time and intentionality. Inner healing isn't about pretending that everything is okay or masking the hurt with temporary fixes like distractions or avoidance. It's about acknowledging the pain, confronting it, and allowing yourself to heal deeply. Healing comes when we decide to stop running from our past and instead allow ourselves to face the reality of it. The process may involve therapy, journaling, prayer, or simply taking the time to reflect on what has shaped you. But healing is a necessary part of building stronger relationships because it frees you from the emotional chains that hold you back. Furthermore, self-awareness challenges us to be honest with ourselves. Many times, we may avoid facing the truth about how we're feeling or what we need because of fear or pride. But if we're not honest with ourselves, how can we expect to be honest with others? If you don't know your own heart, how can you expect to offer love and understanding to someone else? Being self-aware means being willing to ask yourself tough questions, even when the answers aren't easy to hear. It requires humility and the willingness to grow, to confront what needs to change, and to give yourself grace in the process. As you become more self-aware, you also begin to understand how your energy, your words, and your actions affect others. You may not realize it, but we all carry a certain energy, positive or negative, into every interaction. If you are carrying unresolved anger, bitterness, or insecurity, that energy will naturally affect those around you. But when you do the inner work of healing and becoming self-aware, you start showing up differently. You become more present, more patient, and more open to the needs of those around you. Relationships can't thrive when there's emotional toxicity involved. They can only grow when both people are committed to doing the work within themselves. Self-awareness also helps us become more empathetic. It allows us to understand that everyone else has their own battles, their own hurts, and their own struggles. Instead of judging others for their flaws or mistakes, we begin to approach them with compassion because we recognize that we too have areas of vulnerability. Empathy is the key to deeper connection because it shifts the focus from me to us. When we understand our own humanity, we're better equipped to understand and love others. This process of self-awareness and healing doesn't happen overnight. It's not a one-time event, but a lifelong journey. You may find that with every relationship you enter, new areas of your heart are revealed that need healing or refining. The more you grow in self-awareness, the more equipped. And when you do the hard work of looking within and healing what needs to be healed, you're not only transforming your own life, but you're also offering a more authentic and loving version of yourself to the people around you. And that ultimately is the key to stronger, lasting relationships. Forgiveness is one of the most powerful and transformative forces in any relationship, yet it is often the hardest to practice. It's easy to say we forgive someone, but true forgiveness goes much deeper than simply letting go of a past offense. It's not about excusing the behavior or pretending it didn't hurt us. It's about choosing to release the grip that the offense has on our hearts and minds. If we don't learn to forgive, we allow past wounds to dictate the course of our present and future relationships. Forgiveness isn't a one-time act. It's a continual choice. And it requires a willingness to release not only others, but ourselves from the burden of pain and resentment. When we talk about forgiveness, it's important to understand that it's not about minimizing the hurt or pretending it didn't matter. Often people believe that forgiveness means excusing someone's actions or forgetting what happened. But it's not about erasing the past. It's about freeing ourselves from the grip of that past. When we hold on to resentment, bitterness, or anger, we're allowing someone else's actions to continue affecting us long after the incident is over. The truth is, unforgiveness keeps us tied to the very thing we wish to be free from. It imprisons our hearts, prevents us from moving forward, and disrupts our ability to build trust in any relationship. Forgiveness also requires humility. It challenges us to look beyond the wrong done to us and consider the humanity of the person who caused the hurt. It's easy to judge others and hold on to grudges, but true forgiveness invites us to step into the shoes of the other person and acknowledge that they too have their own struggles, insecurities, and flaws. Just as we are imperfect, so are they. This doesn't mean that we ignore the wrongdoing, but it does mean that we choose to see the bigger picture of who the person is, both their flaws and their potential for change. We begin to realize that our forgiveness isn't about giving someone a free pass. It's about giving them the opportunity to grow and for ourselves to heal. In relationships, unforgiveness often manifests as walls between two people. These walls can be emotional, physical, or even spiritual, and they create distance and separation. Over time, these walls become thicker, making it harder and harder to connect. The more we hold on to hurt, the more we isolate ourselves, not just from the person who wronged us, but from the possibility of deeper connection with anyone. And the more we refuse to forgive, the more we find ourselves trapped in a cycle of pain. The person who hurt us may have moved on, but we remain stuck in the past, unable to experience the freedom and peace that forgiveness brings. Forgiveness also restores trust. Trust is the foundation of every relationship, and without it, no relationship can thrive. When someone wrongs us, it's natural for trust to be broken, and rebuilding that trust can take time. However, the act of forgiveness is the first step in restoring that trust. It's the moment when we choose to let go of the betrayal and open ourselves up again to the possibility of connection. It's not always easy and it's not always immediate, but forgiveness allows the space for healing and reconciliation to begin. It's important to note that forgiveness doesn't mean blindly trusting someone again immediately. especially if their actions have shown a lack of remorse or change. Forgiveness allows us to release the pain, but rebuilding trust requires time, effort, and a willingness on both sides to demonstrate change. At its core, forgiveness is about peace. It's about freeing ourselves from the emotional baggage that we carry, which weighs us down and prevents us from fully experiencing the richness of our relationships. Holding on to anger or resentment may seem like a way to punish the person who hurt us, but in reality, it only harms us. Forgiveness is the pathway to inner peace, and that peace spills over into every relationship we have. When we forgive, we create space for love, joy, and connection to flourish. We let go of the toxic emotions that cloud our hearts and open ourselves up to the healing power of grace. One of the most powerful aspects of forgiveness is that it's not just something we do for others, it's something we do for ourselves. The decision to forgive releases us from the grip of our pain and allows us to step into a future where we are not defined by the hurt of the past. It allows us to experience relationships in a new light, free from the shadows of old wounds. Forgiveness brings freedom, and it's only when we embrace this freedom that we can experience the true depth of connection that we're all craving. Forgiveness is not a one-time decision. It's a lifelong practice. It's not always easy, but it's always worth it. As we forgive, we open the door to healing in ourselves and in our relationships. When we make the choice to forgive, we choose to let go of the past, to move forward, and to live in the present with a heart open to love, growth, and deeper connection. True forgiveness doesn't happen instantly. It's a process. But with each step we take, we move closer to healing, closer to peace, and closer to the relationships we desire. Effective communication is the cornerstone of any strong relationship. Without it, misunderstandings arise, emotions go unexpressed, and connection fades. We live in a world where we are constantly communicating, but oftentimes we are not truly communicating. It's easy to talk to someone, but it's much harder to connect on a deeper level. Communication goes beyond just exchanging words. It's about being present with the person in front of you, acknowledging their feelings, and responding with honesty and compassion. Without effective communication, even the best relationships can fall apart, as it's through communication that we share our hearts, our struggles, and our desires. One of the key aspects of effective communication is learning to listen, not just to respond, but to truly hear what the other person is saying. Listening is an art, and it requires patience, focus, and intentionality. Too often when someone is speaking, we're already thinking about what we're going to say next or how we feel about what they're saying. We might be waiting for a pause to interject our own thoughts, but in doing so, we miss the essence of what the other person is trying to communicate. Active listening means putting aside our own thoughts and focusing entirely on the speaker, understanding their words, their tone, and their emotions. When we listen in this way, we create space for real connection to occur. We let the other person feel heard, valued, and understood, and that is the foundation of strong relationships. Effective communication also involves speaking with clarity and honesty. We can't expect others to understand us if we don't communicate our thoughts and feelings clearly. But honesty goes beyond just telling the truth. It's about being open and vulnerable with the other person. Often we hold back our true thoughts and emotions because we fear judgment, rejection, or conflict. But in doing so, we rob the relationship of the opportunity for growth and intimacy. When we communicate honestly, we show the other person who we really are without masks or pretenses. This vulnerability strengthens trust and deepens the bond between people. It's in those raw, authentic moments that relationships move from surface level to something much more meaningful. In addition to honesty, timing is crucial in effective communication. The way we communicate is just as important as what we say. There's a time to speak up, and there's a time to listen, and sometimes there's a time to hold back and give the other person space. Effective communicators are aware of the emotional climate of a conversation and know when it's the right moment to address something difficult or sensitive. Poor timing can make even the most well-intentioned words come across as harsh or dismissive. In contrast, when we approach difficult topics with sensitivity and respect, we create an environment where both people feel safe to express themselves openly. Another key aspect of effective communication is nonverbal cues. Research has shown that the majority of communication is nonverbal, meaning that how we say something often communicates more than the words themselves. Our body language, facial expressions, and tone of voice convey messages that can either reinforce or contradict what we are saying. For example, crossing our arms while speaking may signal defensiveness, while maintaining eye contact communicates openness and attentiveness. In relationships, it's important to pay attention to these nonverbal signals, both in ourselves and in others. Often people are communicating much more than their words suggest. And by becoming more aware of nonverbal cues, we can better understand what they truly mean. This helps us respond with empathy and ensures that we are on the same page emotionally. Effective communication also requires emotional intelligence. The ability to manage and navigate our own emotions while understanding and responding to the emotions of others. When emotions are high, it can be difficult to communicate effectively. If we are angry, hurt, or frustrated, our words can become sharp or defensive, and we risk escalating the conflict. But when we cultivate emotional intelligence, we can manage our reactions, stay calm under pressure, and communicate with more clarity and compassion. It's also about being aware of the emotional state of the other person and adjusting our communication to meet their needs. If someone is upset, for example, we may need to soften our tone and approach the conversation with care. Emotional intelligence helps us bridge the gap between our hearts and minds, allowing us to communicate with understanding and respect. The power of communication in relationships extends beyond the individual conversations we have. It shapes the overall dynamic of the relationship. When communication is open, honest, and empathetic, trust is built and intimacy deepens. However, when communication breaks down, it can create a wall between people. Unspoken grievances, misunderstandings, and unexpressed feelings fester and cause division. In the long run, poor communication leads to resentment and distance. That's why it's essential to make communication a priority in our relationships, to continually check in with one another, and to keep the lines of dialogue open. Moreover, effective communication isn't just about resolving conflict, it's also about celebrating each other. Positive communication is just as important as addressing issues. Praising, encouraging, and affirming one another strengthens the bond and helps build a foundation of support and mutual respect. When we communicate in ways that uplift and empower others, we create a space where love and connection can thrive. Strong relationships aren't built solely on resolving problems. They are also nurtured by the everyday expressions of care, appreciation, and respect. Ultimately, effective communication is about connection. It's about making sure the other person knows that they are seen, heard, and understood. It's about expressing our thoughts and feelings in a way that invites openness and growth. When we communicate well, we build stronger relationships because we create an environment where both people feel valued and supported. It's not always easy and it takes practice, but when we make communication a priority, we lay the groundwork for healthier, more fulfilling relationships. Setting healthy boundaries is one of the most crucial aspects of building and maintaining strong relationships. Many people struggle with boundaries, often because they misunderstand what boundaries are and why they matter. Boundaries are not about building walls to keep people out, but about creating a space where both people can thrive without feeling overwhelmed, disrespected, or taken advantage of. They're about understanding where your needs end and someone else's begin, and making sure those needs are communicated clearly and respected. Without boundaries, relationships can easily become imbalanced, with one person doing all the giving and the other doing all the taking. This leads to burnout, resentment, and emotional exhaustion. At the heart of setting healthy boundaries is knowing and respecting your own limits. Too often we go through life without ever truly acknowledging what we need to feel safe, respected, and loved in a relationship. We might say yes when we really mean no because we don't want to disappoint others. Or we may avoid conflict and allow people to overstep without saying anything because we don't want to seem demanding or difficult. However, if we do not set boundaries, we essentially give up our sense of self, allowing others to dictate how we feel, think, and behave. Setting boundaries means taking responsibility for our own well-being and making it clear to others that we are worthy of respect and care. Setting boundaries is not just about protecting yourself from harm. It's also about preserving the integrity of the relationship. Healthy boundaries help create mutual respect, understanding, and space for each person to grow individually while also maintaining a strong connection. For example, in romantic relationships, it's important to have clear boundaries around things like personal space, time spent together, and emotional needs. Without these boundaries, it's easy to lose yourself in the relationship, neglect your own needs, or become overly dependent on the other person for emotional validation. Boundaries create the space necessary for both people to feel secure, valued, and able to fully engage in the relationship without feeling overwhelmed. In friendships, setting boundaries is just as important. Sometimes we find ourselves in friendships where we are constantly giving, offering advice, or providing emotional support, but the other person never reciprocates. This can lead to feelings of frustration, exhaustion, and resentment. It's essential to recognize when these imbalances occur and take steps to set healthy boundaries to protect our emotional energy. Boundaries might involve saying no to plans when we're feeling drained, limiting the amount of time we spend helping others at the expense of our own well-being, or expressing how we feel when we feel like we're being taken advantage of. By doing this, we teach others how to treat us and ensure that we're not sacrificing our own mental and emotional health for the sake of a relationship. Another key aspect of setting boundaries is learning how to communicate them effectively. Often we avoid setting boundaries because we fear confrontation or hurting the other person's feelings. But avoiding the conversation only leads to greater harm in the long run. Setting boundaries requires honesty, clarity, and assertiveness. It's about expressing your needs in a way that is direct but also compassionate. When you communicate a boundary, you're not attacking or criticizing the other person. Instead, you're simply stating what you need in order to feel safe, respected, and valued. For example, instead of saying, "You always overstep and make me feel bad," you could say, "I need some space to recharge after work. Can we plan to talk or hang out later?" The goal is to communicate in a way that fosters understanding, not conflict. While it's important to set boundaries for your own well-being, it's equally important to respect the boundaries of others. Healthy relationships are built on a foundation of mutual respect, and respecting someone else's boundaries is a clear sign of that respect. This means paying attention to their needs and honoring their limits, even if they differ from your own. If someone asks for space, doesn't want to discuss a certain topic, or sets a limit on their time, it's essential to respect that request without judgment or resentment. When we respect others' boundaries, we foster trust and understanding, which deepens the connection between us. Setting boundaries also helps us maintain a sense of personal responsibility. It allows us to take ownership of our feelings, needs, and actions, rather than relying on others to take care of them for us. When we don't set boundaries, we may expect others to read our minds or anticipate our needs, which leads to disappointment and frustration. But when we set clear, healthy boundaries, we make it clear that we are responsible for our own well-being and that we expect others to treat us with the same level of care and respect. This doesn't mean that we don't care about others. It simply means that we recognize our own worth and that we are not willing to sacrifice our happiness and peace for the sake of someone else's comfort. A critical part of setting healthy boundaries is learning to say no without feeling guilty. Many people struggle with this because they fear that saying no will lead to rejection or disapproval. But the reality is, saying no is an essential part of self-care and maintaining healthy relationships. By saying no, we communicate that we value our time, energy, and needs just as much as we value the other person's. Saying no doesn't mean we don't care about the other person or that we're being selfish. It simply means that we are prioritizing our own well-being. Over time, learning to say no helps us avoid burnout, build self-respect, and establish boundaries that create healthier, more balanced relationships. Ultimately, setting healthy boundaries is an act of self-love and respect. It's about taking ownership of your own life and your own well-being, and it's about creating relationships where both people feel safe, valued, and supported. Boundaries are the framework within which healthy relationships can flourish. And without them, relationships can easily become toxic or draining. By setting and respecting boundaries, we not only protect ourselves, but also create the space for deeper, more fulfilling connections with the people around us. Healthy boundaries allow us to engage in relationships with more authenticity, peace, and joy, knowing that we are taking care of ourselves while still being there for others. Trust is the foundation of every healthy and thriving relationship. Without trust, relationships crumble under the weight of doubt, suspicion, and insecurity. Trust is not something that is given freely or earned overnight. It's something that is built piece by piece over time. It's a delicate balance of words and actions, consistency and vulnerability. Trust is developed through shared experiences, reliability, and most importantly, through the commitment to being true to our word. It's easy to say we trust someone, but true trust goes much deeper. It involves believing in the other person's integrity, knowing that they have our best interests at heart, and feeling confident in their ability to follow through on their promises. Building trust takes time, and it's often tested in moments of difficulty. Trust is not a constant thing. It ebbs and flows, and it's tested in times of vulnerability and hardship. One of the most important aspects of building trust is being dependable. When we say we are going to do something, we must follow through. Reliability builds trust because it shows the other person that we can be counted on. If we are inconsistent or fail to meet expectations, trust begins to erode. It doesn't matter how well we communicate or how loving we are. If we are not reliable, trust will not take root. In relationships, we must make it a priority to be people of our word. This means showing up when we say we will, keeping promises, and following through on our commitments, no matter how big or small. Another crucial aspect of trust is vulnerability. Many people avoid being vulnerable in relationships because they fear being hurt or rejected. However, vulnerability is what opens the door to true intimacy and connection. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we show the other person that we are willing to take a risk, to open ourselves up fully, and to let them see the raw, unguarded version of who we are. Vulnerability builds trust because it demonstrates that we are willing to share our fears, our flaws, and our insecurities without fear of judgment. It shows the other person that we trust them enough to be our authentic selves. Without vulnerability, relationships remain shallow and trust cannot grow. Vulnerability creates the space for the other person to reciprocate, to share their own thoughts and feelings, and to open their heart in return. Trust is also built through communication, particularly through honest and transparent conversations. Communication is the vehicle through which we express our needs, our desires, and our boundaries. When we communicate openly and honestly, we create a foundation of trust. However, dishonesty and secrecy break trust in an instant. Lies, even small ones, create cracks in the foundation that can eventually cause the entire structure to collapse. Trust is built through transparency. being willing to share the truth even when it's uncomfortable or difficult. This doesn't mean we have to be brutally honest or overshare in ways that are hurtful, but it does mean that we prioritize truthfulness and openness in all our interactions. When we withhold the truth or deceive the other person, it sends the message that we do not value their trust or respect their ability to handle the truth. Over time, this creates a sense of betrayal, which can be difficult to recover from. Forgiveness also plays a crucial role in building and maintaining trust. In any relationship, there will be times when trust is broken, whether through a lie, a betrayal, or a failure to meet expectations. In these moments, forgiveness is the only way to rebuild what has been broken. Trust can be restored, but it requires both parties to be willing to work through the hurt, the pain, and the disappointment. Forgiveness does not mean that the offense is excused, nor does it mean that the relationship will go back to what it was before. However, forgiveness is the first step in rebuilding trust because it allows both people to let go of resentment and begin the process of healing. Without forgiveness, trust cannot grow because the past wounds will continue to fester and undermine the relationship. Trust is rebuilt through honest conversations, apologies, and a commitment to change. It takes time, but with patience and effort, trust can be reestablished and the relationship can emerge even stronger. Trust is also fragile. Once broken, it can be difficult to restore, and it requires consistent effort and attention to maintain. Even if trust is rebuilt after a betrayal, the person who was hurt may still have lingering doubts or fears. This is why trust requires ongoing nurturing. It's not something that can be taken for granted. To maintain trust, we must continually show the other person that they are safe with us, that their feelings and needs are important, and that we are committed to being honest, reliable, and supportive. This means being mindful of our actions, words, and behaviors. If we want to maintain trust, we must be intentional about showing up for the other person, being present in the moment, and demonstrating through our actions that we are trustworthy. One of the most powerful ways to build trust is through mutual respect. When we respect another person, we acknowledge their value, their autonomy, and their right to have their own thoughts, feelings, and boundaries. Respecting someone's boundaries, opinions, and emotions is an essential part of trust because it shows that we honor who they are and are not trying to manipulate, control, or diminish them. In a relationship where both people respect one another, trust grows naturally because there is a sense of safety and mutual understanding. Respect reinforces trust because it demonstrates that we are willing to give the other person the space they need to be themselves and to express themselves freely without fear of judgment or rejection. Trust is the cornerstone of all meaningful relationships, whether with family, friends, or romantic partners. It is built over time through consistency, vulnerability, communication, and forgiveness. Trust is not something that can be demanded or rushed. It must be earned and nurtured. And once it is broken, it takes time, effort, and commitment to restore. However, when trust is present, relationships flourish. Trust creates a sense of security, safety, and connection that allows people to love and support one another fully. It's the foundation upon which deep, meaningful relationships are built, and it's the glue that holds them together through challenges and hardships. Without trust, no relationship can truly thrive, but with it, anything is possible. Growth in relationships requires both parties to be committed to personal development and to helping each other evolve. When individuals are not growing, whether personally, professionally, or emotionally, the relationship can stagnate. Relationships, like people, thrive on change and progress. If one person is constantly evolving and the other is staying stagnant, a disconnect begins to form. It's essential that both individuals are willing to put in the work, not just to improve themselves, but to support and encourage each other along the journey. Growth doesn't happen automatically. It's a choice that each person must actively make. In strong relationships, growth is seen not as an individual pursuit, but as something that the relationship requires to thrive. One of the key elements of growth in relationships is the ability to embrace change. Change is inevitable, but many people resist it out of fear or comfort. However, in relationships, change is often necessary for improvement. As individuals, we are constantly evolving. Our values, needs, and desires shift as we experience life's challenges, successes, and milestones. If we resist change, we resist the very essence of what it means to grow. Instead of fearing change, we must learn to embrace it. Relationships can't grow unless both people are open to change, whether that's in how they communicate, how they support each other, or how they approach the future. Embracing change together strengthens the bond because it shows that both individuals are committed to improving themselves and their connection, regardless of how difficult or uncomfortable the process may be. Personal growth in a relationship also requires self-awareness. It's important to know ourselves before we can truly understand and relate to others. Self-awareness involves understanding our own needs, strengths, weaknesses, and triggers. When we are aware of ourselves, we can communicate more effectively, set better boundaries, and manage our emotions more skillfully. It also allows us to take responsibility for our actions. In relationships, we cannot expect to grow if we are not self-aware. Without this awareness, we might find ourselves repeating the same mistakes, projecting our insecurities, or making assumptions about the other person's behavior. Self-awareness fosters accountability. It encourages us to look inward and ask ourselves hard questions about how we can improve and how we can better support the other person. It's a continual process of learning and growing, and it helps us show up as better partners, friends, or family members. Equally important to self-awareness is mutual respect for each person's growth. In a healthy relationship, both people should be equally invested in each other's personal development. This means recognizing that each person has their own path to walk and supporting them in that journey. Sometimes growth means it's easy to fall into a pattern where we get comfortable with the way things are, but this complacency can stifle growth. When we truly respect and support each other's growth, we become active participants in each other's success. We don't try to hold the other person back out of fear, jealousy, or insecurity. Instead, we celebrate their progress and help them overcome obstacles, knowing that their growth is a reflection of the strength and potential of the relationship. Communication is also critical for growth in relationships. Effective communication isn't just about expressing our feelings or sharing our thoughts. It's about doing so in a way that encourages understanding and collaboration. Growth in relationships requires that both individuals are able to communicate their needs and desires without fear of judgment or rejection. It also means being open to receiving feedback and criticism. We all have areas where we can improve, and being open to feedback is essential for personal growth. Communication fosters growth because it allows both people to be honest about where they are and where they want to go. If there are struggles or challenges in the relationship, effective communication ensures that these issues can be addressed constructively, allowing both people to grow through adversity. Without communication, growth becomes a solo endeavor, and the relationship becomes disconnected and stagnant. Sometimes growth in a relationship means confronting difficult truths. It's easy to ignore problems or pretend that everything is fine, but this approach prevents both individuals from growing. Growth requires honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. Being willing to confront issues head on, whether it's about unmet needs, emotional wounds, or personal challenges, allows the relationship to evolve into something deeper and more meaningful. Avoiding confrontation only delays growth, and it may even create resentment or distance between both people. Confronting problems in a healthy way, however, provides an opportunity for both individuals to learn more about each other, understand each other's perspectives, and find new ways to connect. This type of growth leads to greater intimacy and trust because it shows that both people are committed to improving not only themselves, but the relationship as a whole. Growth in relationships also involves the ability to forgive and let go of past hurts. Forgiveness is essential because holding on to grudges or past mistakes keeps us stuck in the past. When we are able to forgive, we free ourselves from the emotional weight of resentment and we create space for healing and growth. Forgiveness is not just about letting go of the other person's mistakes. It's also about letting go of our own negative emotions and choosing to move forward. When we can forgive, we allow ourselves and our partner to evolve, learn from past mistakes, and build a stronger connection moving forward. Growth in relationships isn't possible if we continue to hold on to past hurts. So forgiveness is a crucial step in fostering change. And as much as growth is about change and progress, it's also about maintaining a sense of gratitude for what the relationship already offers. While personal development is important, we must also recognize and appreciate the strengths of the relationship as it is. Relationships evolve, but that doesn't mean we should constantly be striving for perfection. Growth requires patience. It requires us to accept the imperfections and learn from them. By practicing gratitude, we ensure that we don't take the relationship for granted. This gratitude helps us appreciate the small wins along the way and reinforces the bond as we continue to grow together. Growth in relationships isn't always easy. It requires commitment, vulnerability, and effort from both individuals. However, when both people are dedicated to supporting each other's growth, both personally and as a couple, the relationship thrives. Growth in relationships ensures that we continue to evolve together, facing challenges with resilience and creating a deeper, more meaningful connection with every step. It's a constant process of learning, changing, and adapting, but the result is a relationship that's built on mutual respect, love, and a shared commitment to growth.